close the iris a little bit on this one.
As I was sitting there listening to speeches, I looked around this wonderful room, and I know we'll have a chance to see some of the other rooms in this state-of-the-art Boys and Girls Club, number 2000 Boys and Girls Club. I thought to myself, I see all that steel, I see all that cinder block work and electrical work and air conditioning work. And it takes about this much stuff to make a jail. Scott, what it would take? And that's what we've been doing too much of in recent years. We've been using this kind of material and treasure to build jails, to put our children in eventually. No other civilized nation in the world has as many people in jail as we have in jail. So we need more mentors. We need more places like this, where the community comes together and says to the young people of the community, and especially in this neighborhood here, we care about you. Because you see, what these young people are seeing, not just a nice place to play basketball or in the computer room to run a software program. They don't see steel and cinder blocks alone. What they see are people who care about them. What they see are people who love them. What they see are people who have expectations of them and about them and will not let them fail. We do not have anything more important to do than to protect youngsters like this and put them on the road to success. The choice is very simple. We either build our children or we build more jails. It's time to stop building jails and get back to what we know how to do as Americans, and that's to build our children.
What's left? Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. It's my pleasure today to introduce you to Chris Watler. He's been on the show once before. He's the chair of the Boys and Girls Club of Harlem. Now, as you see, Colin Powell tells us that what we're responsible for. We're responsible for our children, and we're responsible for our children when they get into trouble. So we have a young man here that's actually trained in both fields here to help out the kids in the Boys and Girls Club, and then help out ex-offenders when they go to jail and go awry. As Colin Powell says, the most dedicated thing I think we should have is to take care of our children and our children that go awry. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks, Winston.
Good to have you, man.
Good to be back.
Now, we just had an opening up in 145th Street. My school, I went to the school, 1945.
We keep running into people who've gone to the school, which is great.
I actually went to the school. I remember. Now, you imagine this is 1945. And I went for the 6 years. From kindergarten to 6th grade.
Yeah.
So that's 7 years I spent in this school. And now it's been rehabbed, and you're the leading CEO of, or chairman of the board anyway.
I think, as you know well, Winston, it's been a historic effort.
Yes.
Coming out of the convent church and the commitment of the congregants there. And I give a lot of credit to my board colleagues also, and the community who, for many years, had a vision for this space. And like a lot of things in Harlem, sometimes it takes a while before you can get that vision together. But what we have there today at PS 186, it's your old school, is a 10,000 square foot Boys and Girls Club on the ground floor, and unusual for Boys and Girls Club, 79 units of affordable housing in the middle of Harlem at a time where a lot of people are in this city are really saying that housing is one of the critical needs for our families. So, I love what Colin Powell was saying on the intro, but when you think about it, young people need a home to go to where there's, walls and good roof over their head and stuff, so that they can have those experiences in, in a home. So we have way too many of our young people you know, in shelters, not in stable living situations. So we're excited about the fact that there's affordable housing for the community, but especially excited about the club and the opportunity to continue the 36-year legacy of the M.L. Wilson Boys and Girls Club, kind of serving kids in Harlem. And what's really exciting for me is that while we have this new home base that looks great, we're going to continue to take club services to where young people are. Right. So we're working in a couple of local schools, partnering with those schools, Frederick Douglass Academy, one of them, and at the Manhattanville Houses, in a public housing development in West Harlem, bringing, you know, high quality youth development programs to young people, and that's the kind of investment you make up front. That's it. That's important. You know, my day job is working with people who've left prison and jail, and who are trying to get their lives together. And if you ask any one of them, what they'll tell you is, boy, if I had it to do all over again, you know, I'd make sure I took advantage of some things, or I'd love to spend time helping young people not go down the path I went down. So it's really important for us to see both sides of that coin, those human beings, those beautiful children up front, and these beautiful men and women, you know, who are leaving prison, you know, who are part of our communities, that need our support, deserve our support, and when they get it, are ready to work, you know, roll up their sleeves, not just for pay, but they also want to give back and do things.
Well, you have one of the more important jobs as far as, you know, ex-offenders are concerned. I mean, the most important thing is to get out of prison and become productive, so you don't wind up back in there again. I mean, Victor and I talk about this all the time, but you having been the executive director of CEO, Center for
Education.
Center for Employment Opportunities. So I have a boss who is the executive director, a great guy, Sam Schaefer. I'm the New York State ED, so my responsibilities include our program here in New York City, which is the kind of founding and flagship program for CEO. And
how difficult is to find jobs for ex-offenders?
Well, you know, I think it's complicated by a couple of things. You know, one is what we have done with our prison system is to essentially, for the last 40 plus years, put it on steroids. And that we have changed the culture in our communities, in our country, around how we think about people who come into contact with the criminal justice system. There was a time when, you know, in this town, someone who got in trouble would have been met with mentoring, with people in the community who would stand up for that person, you know, with opportunities to get themselves together.
After school.
And exactly. And, you know, we have essentially dehumanized our criminal justice system and turned it into a real machine that is ideally about public safety, but the results of what the justice system has not been about public safety. You think about Harlem or Bedford-Stuyvesant, where I live, the frequent intervention of the corrections system in our state, jail in our town, people who cycle in and out of these systems, whose lives get worse, just the contact with the system makes it hard for them. So we have to be able to balance the ability to hold people accountable for behavior and public safety with the needs, the long-term needs of communities. So there was actually a report came out not too long ago really showing that the effects of incarceration, what it does to children in those communities, and the effects on them in public schools, you know, in their schools. Essentially, it is a hidden tax or burden that our young people bear when you have a parent who goes to prison. And you're going to tend to do worse in school as a result. And some of the data suggests that it might have a much larger effect on student performance than even the quality of teaching. That's pretty profound, that locking up a parent might have a more profound impact than what a teacher could even do in a school. So we've got to change that. You know, that system. I'm very proud to work for the Center for Employment Opportunities. what we do is we get people work and immediate work. So you come out, you come into our life skills program. 5 days later, you're working. Life skills. We spend some time up front making sure
heavy.
that you are ready to work. So you
Okay.
need documents to be able to work. That's
Right,
important.
right,
You don't
of
have
course.
your social security card and other things.
Right.
We work with our clients to do that. We do something called cognitive behavioral employment, which is,
Teach them how to act.
well, I like to say, teach them to think about how they're thinking before they act.
You don't say, yo, boss.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yo, you the
Those-
man, I know.
You know,
All
some of our wonderful participants have been spent a lot of time in and out of systems, and so impulse
Right.
control may not be, you know, high on their list of skills. And so we
Right.
want to make them aware of that, because when you're on a
Right.
job, different things happen. A customer may be annoyed, not with you, but with a service. A boss, you know, may tell you in a way you don't like to do something, and your response to that
Temper
situation.
control.
Diss me.
Yeah.
Temper
So
control.
yeah. So we do that with folks up front.
Okay.
We give them boots, and we put them to work on what we call transitional employment work crews, and they work throughout the city. We field in New
Oh,
York
that's
City alone about
great.
35 work crews a week, and that's about 175 folks are working, and we pay every day. So the benefit of CEO is that you start work with us today, you get a paycheck.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Today.
Oh, Victor, you just found a friend.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying,
Victor is
and that's good
Victor
because
is a second chance president at NAN,
yeah,
National Action
and
Network.
actually, you know, commend you on the work and congratulations on the continued work. And I've had experience with CEO. As a matter of fact, like he was getting ready to explain, I'm the chairman of the Second Chance program at the National Action Network, and we actually ran a life skills preparatory program there. And a few of our participants were referred to CEO, and as a result of the continuing services that they were able to provide, they were able to get employment. So
That's great. I love
commend
hearing
you.
that.
And I'm kind of familiar with CEO. I've done some work with them, and you know, in the past and stuff
Right.
like that there. But just to speak to a few issues that you mentioned, especially about people coming home formerly incarcerated. As myself, formerly incarcerated person, knowing the challenges that a person faces after incarceration, especially being stuck with the stigma of a felon or
Well, give us
ex-offender, et cetera, et cetera.
Victor, what was your most difficult part? What hit you the hardest?
Well, I think for me, definitely housing. That was a
Oh,
very,
housing, yeah,
a
of
very,
course.
very
A place to
important
live.
aspect of a person when
Of
they
course,
come home is
of
to
course.
get stable and safe housing.
Right.
Because stable and safe housing gives you a
The key.
platform from which you can sort of like launch.
Well, that's anybody,
And,
huh?
yeah, and if you don't have that, especially for a person coming home, you know what I'm saying, you're almost left at the mercy of the system once again, which also adds to the recidivism rate. And I've known a couple of people that came home, and I'm talking about these guys did like 10 or 15 years, all right, and came home and was in unstable housing circumstances, and within 2 to 3 weeks, they was right back in. So that housing is a very important component of a person that's coming home.
Well-
And that job definitely is a very, very, that's like the core of a person
Yeah.
being able to stay out, sustain themselves, take care of themselves,
I
take
would
care
think
of
the
their family.
job would come
Especially-
first, because
yeah.
you can't get the housing unless
Well-
you got a job.
Well, let me say like this here, right? If you got a job and no place to stay, you know what I'm saying? It sort of kind of like makes it difficult in terms of you being able to get to work on time,
Yeah.
because you never know where you might be, where you're going to be sleeping at from day to day. So that ability for you to be able to maintain employment, you know what I'm saying, it becomes even more
Okay.
difficult. So with that housing component, it gives you sort of like a platform and a sturdier way that you can continue to be employed, and it also makes you feel better, because
Okay.
I was homeless at one time, and I know how I felt not having a place to stay.
Do you
and
have
it was
any
difficult.
any answer to that for the people?
I don't think, you know, what the research tells us about people who come home from prison and jail is that there are certain stabilization needs that you have, and it's common sense, right?
Right.
I need a place to live. You know, I need an address. You know,
Right.
even for
Right.
someone
You
who's
gotta
able
have
to
an
be in
services
touch with
without
me.
it.
Right, benefits.
You know, I need employment, right? I need a way to make money. We think transitional employment's essential because some of our clients may not have work histories.
Right.
So they can develop some work experience, even as we help them to get a job in the private sector. having some work experience where you can put on a resume, yeah, you know, I was at CO and I worked here, and you know, that's helpful.
What
Treatment.
What are some of the things you have them do?
Our crews go out and we provide services to public service entities like the New York City Housing Authority, CUNY. So you might see our crews cleaning up, you know, sites at New York City Housing Authority. You might see us painting, you know, in the community, doing the kind of work that often public agencies, you know, don't have the resources to get to. Someone actually recently told me, one of our CUNY campuses said, look, you know, we have maintenance staff, but we never have the opportunity to paint the fences, you know, to make them look, you know, something like that. Now, for our clients, what they're getting is an apprenticeship, essentially. Like they're learning how to do something, because we send a supervisor out with every crew. Line of sight supervision. Crews are about 5 or 6 people each, and so they're getting someone coaching them constantly, our staff, on, you know, how they're working, and then every day we rate how they work. And that information goes to their job coach, so the job coach can work with them and talk to them about how they're doing in the program.
Does this, how do organized labor members, like union people, feel about guys coming in to pick up some of the slack? You know, is there like, well, you know, this is our thing, and you know,
They're
it's like they're taking, you know, is there any? Do you ever come across any friction like that? Do the people, do they embrace the individuals coming to work and just make them feel at home in the process?
I think, you know, what our customers say to us is that they believe in the mission, right? We all, on some level in society, like there was lots of different contributions to mass incarceration. So rules that declined opportunities for people, that removed aid so people couldn't even go onto a CUNY campus if you had a felony conviction, you know, like those kinds of things. And I think now the institutions, you know, in government, you know, even in the private sector, see a real opportunity to do their part. So everyone's stepping up. You know, I think for us, what we say is work. I'd love it if there was full employment in this country. That my job, you know, because it'd be great. You take our life skill classes and we get your job right away. And then our job coach will stay with you for a year, making sure that you stick with it. That's not the case. The case is that there are a lot of unmet needs in this city, that if you live in a public housing development, for example, where there's $14 billion of deferred maintenance, right?
14 billion.
There's a lot of opportunity, housing. Just in New York City housing. We should support, you know, helping, and public housing is a great example. Every time you put one of our guys to work, some of them actually live in public housing or have family in public housing. You're kind of reinvesting in the community, in a sense. I can't tell you how many times I was working with a crew out of Marlboro houses in November, and we're cleaning up. I've never seen so many leaves in my life. And it's because the tradespeople were going to fix windows and doors. They were going to do, you know, real serious trades work in the buildings. But there just wasn't enough hands to clean up. And I can't tell you how many residents passed by and said, thank you guys for doing this. It's great. Like, so for the residents of that housing, they appreciated someone was making the place look good. Even though it's not emergency, you know, you could step over leaves and trash if you need to, but should you have to.
Safety hazard, because when leaves get wet, even for cars, you know, you can slip and slide on the pavement.
I saw one mother come out taking her kid, little child to school, holding the child's hand, and stepping over leaves that, you know, were up to the child's knees in front of the building. And that wasn't because NYCHA doesn't want to do it. They simply did not have the manpower. That's where we come in. You know, fill that gap. And again, our guys are learning how to work. So it's first, it's an apprenticeship program, and we think everyone, unions, public service agencies, I want my guys to get good union jobs.
Going from a daily paycheck, then when they get their regular job, most places pay bi-weekly. You know, do you work with them on budgeting their money, setting up a bank account, and things of that nature?
There are a couple things that we do in our pipeline that I think are really important. One of the things that we do is in New York City, we have a pilot program under the Connections to Care initiative to screen for depression. Right? We know a lot of our clients come out of prison or jail, you know, not in the best mind frame. You know, they may have a mental health need. So we screen up front for that and really try to work with our clients on those issues, because that can get in the way.
Yeah.
If you're really depressed, if you're not, as one participant told me, there's some days I don't even want to get out of bed. That works against you if you're trying to, get a job. But it's understandable why you would feel that way. So getting people access to treatment, critical. The other thing that we do is we help our folks around budgeting. We're actually in the process of moving to what's called pay card for paying our clients. So we've been paying by check for over 20 years. We're now moving to pay cards, and this is a terrific product.
So it gives
what
them an
it
account?
Is, it said even if you don't have a bank account, you have an account with this card with us.
Like
so now we
card,
load your paycheck every day when you're done work on that card, right? The beauty of it is you can use it fee-free at ATMs. We tell you where, and at banks.
Beautiful.
The banks where you can
Can I get one?
I know. But
Load it up, too.
The beauty of it, let's say we get you a job after 2 months with us. You can go to that employer and say, I have a pay card. You can just load my paycheck on that card, even if you're unbanked. And so what that does is it brings our participants into the cashless economy.
Yes.
Where they can make payments.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Like everyone else. I withdraw money if I have to pay a bill. Now they have a product that, that helps them do that, rather than going to very expensive check cashing.
Yeah, I imagine if we opened up the phones, we'd be flooded with people. You know what I want to do? Let's do a roll-in. I'm going to see if Senator Perkins is available to us. You're supposed to come on too, also. So run one of the roll-ins, other roll-ins, and we'll be right back at you. This is an example of somebody coming out of prison and what problems they have. All right? Be right back at you.
Each month, around 250 inmates get released from prison and end up in Travis County. That number will triple for the month of November when federal prisons release some drug offenders early. KXAN's Phil Prazen shows us why there may be a lack of jobs and housing for ex-offenders in Austin.
I really do believe in second chances for people who want it.
7 years ago, Isa Arazola sold drugs and committed a burglary. She's a college student now, but still can't find a steady job with her criminal history.
Served our time, and now we are trying to be upstanding citizens in our community, and we are still held back based on our past.
She came to City Hall with a dozen of other activists to say the city's fair hiring ordinance for ex-felons doesn't go far enough. They want the council to vote for more support at a November 9th committee.
I've been denied callbacks and interviews.
After years of crime, David Pena founded Reach Out Ministries, a Christian-based nonprofit for transitional homes. He says 3 out of 4 clients succeed in his faith-based program.
They're working full-time, they haven't reoffended, they're not using, and they're going into stable housing when they leave us.
Pena says having mentors and job placement options keeps ex-offenders off the streets.
They're being released into the community anyway, regardless of whether they get help or not. They could be your neighbors anyway.
Experts point to the stats. Without a job and a home, these ex-felons are likely to commit more crimes and be right back in where they came. Phil Prazen, KXAN News.
Yeah.
As you see, there's a typical story of not having anything to do and the difficulty of getting employment. And there's a young college kid, not of our color, and I imagine it's twice as difficult for us. So there's a classic example of a young woman going to school and not be able to get employment because she had something on her record.
Yeah.
So how do you approach people like that?
Well, there are some things, some policy changes that I think are important to highlight. In New York City, there's a kind of fair chance hiring policy where you can no longer discriminate against someone simply because they have a criminal conviction. Now, if I have a conviction for bank robbing, there's a legitimate reason why a bank would say, no, you cannot work there. But there isn't a legitimate reason necessarily for a bank to say you can't work here if you had a drug sale conviction when you were 17 and you're 50 now. So It's telling
Yeah.
employers essentially, not to give people an opportunity. Don't upfront screen out people, but give the opportunity for your process to happen and get to the best applicant, and then ask them, oh, by the way, we're interested in you, but tell us a little bit, about your background. And all the employers that we work with, I have to tell you, by and large, are really, really happy with the employees that they get through us.
That's good to hear.
We essentially function as a staffing agency for employers. We find them the right match. We stick with our clients for up to a year. We actually incentivize them coming back to us, so they get what we call rapid rewards when they turn in a paycheck showing that they're still working. So we really work with them and the employer to make sure that there's a good fit. But even when there's not a good fit, and that happens all the time, even for anyone, even if you don't have a criminal conviction, lots of employers talk about the cost of hiring, the risk of hiring. All we're saying is our clients are people who want to work. If you truly want to get to the best person, don't distort the labor market and your choices. Interview qualified people and then make a determination based on that. And again, employers are usually very, very happy with the results when they hire people, even if they happen to be formerly incarcerated.
I remember mentioning to you when you were 49 that at 50, the floodgates are opened up. And that seemed to have actually happened.
Yeah, well,
That's amazing.
I'm blessed, and I never forget it. I grew up in the city. I grew up in Brooklyn. My parents were immigrants to this country. I grew up in a rent-controlled 2-bedroom apartment with 5 people.
Whoa.
So I
So
understand this
people.
city.
Okay.
I've been around people, who have fractured laws, and I've watched, what's happened. The thing that I've always been impressed with, about this city and about communities in general is that communities are regenerative. They naturally want to take care of children. Heal when things are hurt. Like that's who we are at our core.
It's our nature.
And that's our nature. And what mass incarceration has done is to really distort that, make us less empathetic. And so when our brothers and sisters come out of prison, and this isn't just a phenomenon in the African American community, you can find this in communities all across the country. There's an opportunity for us to really welcome them back and really work with them to help them to be with us in the community again. They want to come home to their families. They want jobs. They want a decent place to live. A large number of people are parents who go to prison, so their children, need them. And so there are real opportunities for us now to think differently. One, because the science tells us that. We didn't know this 40 years ago. I tell someone, I get asked all the time, is your program effective? Do you have evaluative research? I said, when we were considering creating policies to lock people up, no one ever put those policies through any rigorous scientific test. But now we're putting, the policies to help and uplift, through those. And the good news is we're finding increasingly that those kinds of approaches are much better than people. New York City is the safest big city in this country. It's an absolute miracle. Certainly from when I was growing up in this town. And when you tell people that and tell them that we've also dropped our prison population in this state and our jail population, how did we do that? We did that because communities stood up, dropped the rock, right? Communities organized. Communities. It wasn't because folks at the top got religion on this. It was because communities began to say something isn't right here. It's not who we should be as Americans. It doesn't work what we see. And it's that change from the bottom up that has happened. So, I think organizations like CEO, those are ideas that came out of, people really trying to think about solutions, but being pushed from the bottom up.
What would you say to Donald Trump if you had his ear?
I would say to him how important the progress that we've made, in justice reform,
and what sort of help did he give you?
Well, the federal government has played, you mentioned the Second Chance Act. That was passed under Republican President George Bush, signed into law by him. Expanded slightly under, President Obama. So there's an opportunity for the federal government to provide some leadership. I think the the fact that President Obama visited a prison, the only sitting president to do that.
My son was there.
Yeah. You know, I think that those opportunities, there have been drug law reforms. So we can look at decriminalizing marijuana, for example, and not have police officers
not with Sessions
spending
as
their
AG.
time. You know, so I think you know what I would say to the president is there are a lot of things that are actually working really well, and I would hope that they would look at the data, you know, on those things that are working well and support those things that are working well.
Okay.
And you know that's they're tremendously smart people I know in the Department of Justice. You know, that are career people, and I think that you know that case will be made, you know, to the incoming attorney
When you
general.
look at the marijuana issue, a lot of kids don't understand it. If you have a prior arrest for drugs, you can't get financial aid, and that's a setup to keep
Even
you.
marijuana?
It's a setup to keep you from
Going to school?
advancing your education.
That's right.
But it's interesting.
I thought marijuana was a misdemeanor.
It is a misdemeanor, but any drug-related crime, but remember now, you have presidents who admitted to having smoked marijuana. Presidents and attorneys.
And
How
now
the laws have been manipulated to keep poor children and children of color out of the educational pipeline and into the prison pipeline. And we need to look at that. Even the resurgence of heroin now, and I did an article some years ago about how it would be back, and through this situation in Afghanistan, it is back. Compliments of the U.S. government. But because white kids are now hooked on the heroin, they don't want them criminalized. They want them looked at as being in need of some help and counseling. And it's interesting how it's playing out between the two groups.
I think you should bring to the people's attention about Afghanistan. Afghanistan has been the center of drugs, the best drugs on the planet, forever. I mean, back in the 50s, you get the best dope from Afghanistan. And people don't understand why we're there.
Yeah, the Taliban cut the heroin trade.
That's right.
Eliminated it. The Northern Alliance came back with the U.S. and the heroin trade was back in business. So, and we need to study what the government is doing, and we need to study history to understand how. See, I had a professor, Barame at CCNY. He said, history doesn't just happen. It's charted and it's planned. And the world that we live in is a pond. And if a rock is thrown in the pond over there, it's going to have a ripple effect on you over here. So everything going on in the world we need to be looking at and realize that the need of the person here, the devastation of a person there, it affects us all. Because we're all in the same family. We're all, as Martin Luther King says, we're all in the same ship right now. So I've been thinking about this, how white kids, you shouldn't charge them with being a drug addict, they need help. But all these black people that have been sitting in prison, rotting away, and how they use marijuana, illegally searching our kids for 12 years to stigmatize them and prevent them from moving ahead. So as you work with the folks, and there are some guys in my church who are ex-offenders and have come in and they're doing a great job at the church. I commend you all on what you're doing. And you said you're in 11 cities across the country?
Yes, CEOs in 11 cities across the country.
Oh, that's fascinating.
So is there a chance that you can we need this in all 50 states, really? To help
I'd love that.
people.
I'd actually become president to support that as well. We have a long racialized kind of history of in this country around the justice system, and I think Michelle Alexander's book is kind of quoted a lot. But lots of read The Souls of Black Folk by Du Bois. Like you can really see the seeds of this, and you don't have to tell a person of African descent in this country what about that difference. I will say I think the current kind of opioid epidemic is now reaching much farther. So in communities like Buffalo and up in Western New York, it's a
making their
problem.
own drugs.
It's a real problem, and so the opportunity here for us is not to recede into the kind of classic a STEM mentality, but to say that we know something. I actually think there's a lot to learn from the way inner city communities have responded to the drug epidemic and the lack of response from our government. There's an opportunity now to think about that in response to this larger, problem that we're seeing around heroin, both in the inner cities and in rural communities. There's an opportunity for rural communities to come into inner cities, speak to activists, speak to people on the ground who've had to really work through these issues, fight to make sure the treatment was a right for people, that you're able to get that to happen. And by doing that, we lift up all our brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Right.
When we are providing access to treatment, to employment, helping people to be whole, when we're changing our justice system to really be about justice.
Yeah.
And not
And I think we really have to understand how, we were talking about Afghanistan. We did shows about years ago how the drug trade was actually supporting Wall Street to the tune of how many billions dollars a year? I mean, this is really, our community has to learn and understand this is planned genocide.
Yeah.
This is all, and we have to understand that thoroughly. So we as a community have to work around all this, and we have to be most compassionate to people who fall prey to the system that's set up against us.
My thing is, in communities, what we can't afford is to wait for those larger problems to be solved.
Yeah,
Right?
we have to take a
If
hand
we're
in
waiting
this.
for heroin to stop coming from Afghanistan,
It's not gonna stop.
It's always been
from
here. Come
Colombia, if we're
That's
waiting,
where it's gotten us,
and,
right?
and that's where our
50s,
activists, I
40s.
think, have been
That
particularly,
go back to the 40s with that.
voicing the need for us to work on the ground in our communities, because we can create change. Look, we cigarette smoking down among young people in this country to the point that cigarette companies are moving to Asia, moving overseas.
And Africa.
Right? It's possible to change the tide. But we really, if we all sit around and wait for the macro stuff to get solved, it ain't happening, because there are vested interests in things.
Exactly.
And things we can't.
And people benefit and get rich off of incarceration, and for the most part, it's our black and brown people that are being incarcerated at a very large amount. And just to speak to that issue is speaking about the communities and things that we should and can be doing, right, that I'm a part of, and you spoke about activism, right, and I'm a part of a coalition that's called Challenging Incarceration. And what we have come up with is a platform to address components of the criminal justice system. And what we came up with were 4 important points that we found are the most important pressing issues that needed addressing and needed to be reformed. So I'll have to read this right quick, and I'm not going to be long, right? So it's called Challenging Incarceration, and what we came up with was that we're going to be addressing the end of mass incarceration by reducing the amount of people that are in prisons and jails. And along that, we also added on that the parole system, which is parole reform, raising the age of criminal responsibility, the bail reform, and revamp all sentencing. The whole sentencing guideline needs to be revamped, because when it comes to people being sentenced, it is us who is being sentenced for longer periods of time. And the laws are designed so as that fact that when you get caught once, it's that stigma, and then it's the collateral damages. So when you come back again, the punishment is twice as much as it was the time you went before. So those are the points that we're addressing with regards to that. We're also talking about promoting community empowerment, education, reconstruction, and control. We need to educate our community. A lot of times people don't have a clue as to what's going on behind these prison walls. Now I think that because there's more information available, people are becoming a little bit more involved, a little bit more concerned about what's going on in our prison, because these people that are in our prisons are going to be the same people that is going to eventually come back to our communities. How will these people be coming back to communities? In what conditions will they be coming back? Well, you have to begin that process when they are behind those walls. You have to begin the process of changing and transforming that person so that they can become a better person once they are released. But in order for that to happen, you have to have the mechanism in place for that to happen. For instance, TAP, Tuition Assistance. Okay, they took that out of the prison system in 1994. the prison system skyrocketed. It's proven statistically that a person that goes to prison and becomes educated, receives a degree, gets some type of job skills and training, when they come back, they're more equipped to deal with the circumstances they have to deal with. Like you talking about job training, education, and skills. So a person comes back with a degree or with some job skills, whereas when they went in, they might not have even been able to read. But now this person is given an opportunity to read, go to college, get a job skill. These are things that he can apply once they get out. So these are the things that we're talking about in challenges with incarceration, ending state violence in the prisons. People are being abused, killed, murdered, you know what I'm saying? All type of things that happen to people in jail. So we're talking about dealing with that. And the most important thing is to end the structural racism and ensure the focus on women and LGBTI group and protect the human rights of all people, including groups that are disproportionately harmed by the punishment system. So these are all the components that the Challenging Incarceration Coalition that I'm a part of are actually working on, and we are doing a lot of work with addressing these particular issues in mass incarceration, because the system is designed to work for people and for people to gain financial gain. And that's all it's designed for. It was never designed for people to be changed or transformed and to come out better. But now, people are beginning to be woken up, and our society is now becoming a little more concerned about our returning citizens, because you want to know who's coming back to your community. Like you mentioned about public safety, things of that issue there. You got to come back better.
You want to welcome Senator Perkins to the show? Are you on, Bill?
This is Senator Bill Perkins. How's everybody?
How you doing?
Okay,
All right,
Senator.
With you. Sounds like an exciting conversation y'all having. Very relevant and very powerful.
Yes. How are you?
Especially that conversation as it relates to education. You know, that's the key, whether you are incarcerated in on Rikers Island or in a public school, so to speak. Right. Bottom line is, wherever we are, we need to be getting our education. And that gives us the opportunity to be freer, whether we're in jail or whether we're outside of jail. We're in prison or in the streets. Education is the key to freedom.
Amen.
Intellectual freedom, spiritual freedom, and it opens up doors of opportunity for even employment and other types of training. And so I'm happy to hear the conversation is focusing on how we can do better by those who are incarcerated in terms of the educational opportunities that should be available to them. I know we've done some of that already, and it's a good thing that we're doing more, but we can never do too much. We can never do too much. The best skill you can come out with is knowing how to read, knowing how to write, knowing how to communicate, and thereby having the basic skills that will enable you to get even greater skills or even more technical skills. So this is a great conversation, and I hope that the folks who are listening on Rikers Island or in other parts of the state realize that we're out here looking out for them and are going to be pushing to make sure that all the educational opportunities that are available, that they get an opportunity to have.
Senator, you were some may not know, but I appreciate you because you were the impetus to bring Barack Obama to New York in 2007.
Oh, that's right.
I will.
That's right,
Bill. That gave me an opportunity to sit and talk with him then.
That's right.
And you went against the mainstream.
I remember that.
You did what you felt was right, and absolutely you were right in bringing Barack Obama to New York to have him meet with us and get that train moving. And 8 years down the road.
So does that mean you're bringing them back to New York again?
Well, let me say this, just to clarify the record. I didn't bring Obama to New York. We brought Obama to New York.
Amen.
I took orders from you, those who elected me to represent you.
Amen.
Shared with me what you wanted in a president, and obviously you had in mind Barack Obama. I just had the privilege, thanks to you, to have access and thereby communication with him and his team so that he could come to the greatest place at some point in time in the world called Harlem. And so, and do a great job on behalf of the people, not only of Chicago as he did when he was a state senator, but even more as a United States president. And so we were blessed that we were able to be a part of a very historic moment, and that he lived up to that moment. And I'm sorry he's got to go, but I'm glad he's going, in the sense that, you know, he did his time,
Right.
and he did it well, and we all have fond memories and proof of the impact that he's had on us individually as well as collectively.
You want to mention February 14th and what's happening on the
18th. The 18th.
February 18th?
Caucus weekend.
Well, you know, the 18th of this month of February, we are going to be, again, joining you and hopefully many others from throughout the state, but especially from the neighborhood, at our caucus weekend. And one of the things that I'll be doing while participating in that weekend is I'll be having a workshop on humane alternatives to long-term solitary confinement.
All right.
Some legislation we call the HALT legislation that puts an end to what we know as the draconian practice of solitary confinement.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to be joined by Assemblyman Jeff Aubrey, who has also introduced such legislation. And again, it's a hallmark principle that solitary confinement is effectively torture.
Well, that's what it is.
It's not just a confinement, it's a confinement that has been determined by the United Nations as an act of torture. And in practice, and serves no useful or beneficial purpose whatsoever to the society, and especially for those who are subject to that type of torture. So it's inhumane, it's un-American, it's unjust, and we all need to make sure that we speak out loud and clear that that type of incarceration is unacceptable.
You might mention Khalif Browder.
Yeah, I thought that.
You know, that's a classic example of a young man going in at 16 and it driving him completely. Out of the 3 years, he spent 2 years in solitary confinement.
2 years in solitary. Yeah. That's right.
And there's an example of what happens to the youthful mind. It was his first night out. His mother didn't let him go out much, but this was his first night. He had 11 o'clock curfew, he was on his way home, and he was 2 blocks from home. And he was picked up. We had his brother on a month ago or so. Now there's a story.
We have to start looking at these issues in terms of treatment, in terms of providing people with a model that will enable them to turn around bad behavior into productive community service and family service, and help them to become the human beings that we all are, even if perhaps we may have made a mistake. So this is an isolationist model that we're presently using, and effectively is considered by human rights activists from the United Nations throughout the world to be an act of torture. So we believe that we have to restrict the use of these solitary confinements to very small population of individuals who need intense treatment that can help them heal and grow. Heal and grow. Those are the words that we are looking forward to seeing in practice, and not torture. And I think that with the support of our colleagues in the Senate and in the Assembly, Jeff Aubrey is handling the legislation on the Assembly side. We believe that we can move this legislation forward and bring justice, a better justice model to the people of the state, and to those who unfortunately are being crippled in a very inhumane way to what we now call solitary confinement.
You see, we have a good friend of yours here, Chris Wattler.
Hi, Chris.
Hey, Senator Perkins, how are you?
I'm hanging in there, brother. How you doing?
Good, good.
Don't say hanging. Don't say hanging. Don't say hanging the black man.
I know that the governor has just released, his budget, and I'm wondering, like, your assessment. It's terrific to hear you talk about the HALT, the HALT effort, HALT legislation. I'm wondering other areas where you think we can make progress during this legislative session.
Well, we're not quite yet prepared to speak too explicitly about all of this budget right now, but let me just say that we need to have more money that comes back directly to our community-based organizations that are doing the kind of work that some of you are doing, not only in terms of criminal justice. There's a housing crisis in our neighborhoods, and we need to see some more subsidized kind of housing, so-called affordable housing.
Really affordable.
That is defined by what's in people's pockets, not what's in somebody's calculation. Because for some, affordable is a misnomer. You may think you can afford it because the word affordable is attached to it, but when you actually get closer, you realize that it's unaffordable. So we need to have a housing policy talking about affordability as defined by what's in people's pockets, not as defined by policymakers and others, because it begins to be hypocritical, and instead of providing, we're denying people the housing opportunities that we're bragging about.
What's the future look like, Bill? I understand there's a city council.
I'm very optimistic that the movements that I've been more or less involved with, such as this one that's about the criminal justice, are catching on. The messaging is being picked up by people. So I feel optimistic about some of the policy changes that folks are advocating for. Clearly, as things move in the right direction doesn't mean that they're necessarily moving smoothly and as quickly as they should. But I'm happy to see that people are not giving up or giving out, that they're still trying to make a difference, and they're still coming up to Albany to advocate to us the type of legislation they think we need. As you may know, I'm also planning on returning to the city council, and I look forward, again, from that arena to be able to do even more than what we're able to do in the state senate. And so I feel optimistic about what we're going to be able to do over the next few years.
How does Donald Trump's presidency change things or interfere with our progress?
Well,
fellow New Yorker he is.
Yeah. This is the Donald Trump of the Central Park Five.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah?
No different from that point of view.
That's right.
Unfortunately, he's the president. But I believe that we will have to be very vigilant, muscle up, and not take this lightly.
Right.
Because, he has an agenda. And you can be sure that if we're going to be a part of that agenda, it's not going to be out of any courtesy that he's extending to us. It's going to have to be out of struggle to make sure that what's on the plate is what we need. I don't see him necessarily in a favorable light. I want to be frank about that.
Right.
But I think that it's up to us to make him do what we need for our families and for our community. It's as simple as that. The good news is it's not that complicated. We got to work very hard to get him to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think President Obama is going to be.
And I don't have any problem with prayers. I don't have any problem with chants. I don't have none of that. All that's good. But I also know he's president because he got elected to be president. And we have to be participating in those electoral processes. I know a lot of people say, oh, they don't do nothing for you. Well, now Trump will teach you how bad it could get.
That's right.
That's right.
Amen, brother.
You say voting don't count. You'll see how much not voting don't count.
Right?
That's right.
That's the
people
word.
didn't vote.
And you're voting for a councilman is coming up February 14th. Is that the correct date?
Yes, thank you very much for mentioning that. I'm looking forward to this council. I was able to serve there in the past. I think there's more of opportunity for me to better serve the neighborhood is greater if I go through that door. No disrespect to the door that's open for me in the Senate. I just have to decide which door can I do more for you and the people that I represent. Right. I think the door at City Hall is a little bit more opportune than the one up in Albany at this point in time. Those of us who have the privilege of representing have to decide where we can be most useful. And so I think as per what I know about the council, having been there, and what I know about Albany, having been there, that I can be most useful for you and for that movement of folks that are out there on the level of city government. And so I'm looking forward to...
Thank you, Bill. We're about to sign out. We got about a minute and a half. Well, we'll come out to vote February 14th for Bill Perkins for City Council. Maybe he can have you on the show in person between now and then.
Yeah.
Maybe something for, maybe something for Black History Month.
You know how to reach the office to schedule it up.
All right.
They know the routine, so if you call Winston, they'll accommodate you.
Okay.
So you just call Linda and she'll make it happen.
All right. Thank you.
All right, Bill.
Thank you very much. Okay, folks, keep the faith. Keep the faith. Or keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
See you on the 18th.
This show gets more rewarding the more difficult things get, I guess. Because I think this president's done nothing but open our eyes up, just like Bill says. And we know what happens when you decide that your vote doesn't count, or you don't have a dog in the fight, or it doesn't make any difference who you vote for. Now we see what happens. Now all these things about the Russians, come on. No. This is buffoonery.
They forgot to include the Martians.
And even Putin is now commenting on the...
No, this is laughable now.
But when you're in the struggle, right, the day before the election, when you went to bed and woke up the next day, the struggle didn't dissipate. It didn't go anywhere. The day before Obama was elected and the next day you woke up and he was president, the struggle was still there. The challenges are still there. And again, that's an activist kind of heart around things. Like the idea that, as Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing, right? Like if folks are waiting for something to happen, that's why, it's important, like you heard the senator talk about, that our legislators are doing work, our political folk. It's important on the ground that our activists are working, our communities are working. It's important that programs that are getting dollars and being paid to do stuff, that we're working, hard. So the struggle,
this is
the faces may change, but the struggle continues.
It's a grind.
And the struggle still continues. And stay tuned for more. And power to the people. God in me loves the God in you. Stay tuned more for the Gilchrist Experience. Power to the people. Thank you for coming, guys. God bless.